Thank you very much again. It's lovely to take part in this lovely group with so many like-minded people staying together here to talk to us about someone who's so dear to us, isn't it?
Yes, I'd like to
So
thank you all.
it's very difficult and it's very pleasurable, and at the same time it's very difficult to talk about someone who is really very overboard, right? He goes beyond many classification or lots of kinds of course, people try, some friends of his used to say, well, Sergio, I don't think he was human. I think this is an overstatement, but people who really were very close to him and they saw so many things, they witnessed so many things, they really doubt about this kind of a human-like person called Chico Xavier. Oh, come on, that was not real. I couldn't, because many people we met in our lives, old spiritists, they were very skeptical people, very tough people in terms of skepticism. But a mere meeting with Chico Xavier or some minutes with Chico Xavier, right, turned them completely into believers. It was very fun. Sometimes people are very, I remember, well, we can tell about this stuff, but first and foremost, we try to make a sequence of thoughts about that in terms of our lives. And I remember back when I was 5 years old, I remember hearing my grandparents, because my mother and my father, although my mother was a medium, my father had been studying to be a priest, a Catholic priest. So my father kind of forbade my mother to talk about this, right? My mother had mediumship, but she wouldn't talk about this since my father didn't like it. But my grandparents, I remember when I spent holidays, about 2 months in their house, they talked about Chico Xavier, and I felt something very good when they talked about him. I thought I felt hope, and I felt some kind of connection with that kind of being, although I had never really understood exactly what was going on in terms of their talks. But later on, in 1971, right, there was a program on TV, a milestone in Brazilian TV. I was reading here on Wikipedia, right? I think I'm gonna share. Can I share my image with you? It will be in Portuguese, but you can see that I'm gonna read it for you. There was this program called Pinga Fogo, which could be a kind of quick fire, where a person is bombarded with all kinds of questions from many experts and many people, reporters. So Chico Xavier was called to this famous TV program. And for the first time, it was a very huge, wide pool of TVs doing this. And according to Wikipedia, I'm talking about Wikipedia, right, people? According to Wikipedia, was the program was set to last about 1 hour, and ended up taking about 2 hours, 3 hours, more than 3 hours. This was in the 1971, July 28th. In December 21st, they repeated the program. It was meant to be about 1 hour again, and then extended to 4 hours of program. People from all over the country calling in and asking questions, and it was a very wise man. And this was a milestone. I remember watching this program, even, of course, in my house, my parents' house, which was not very free to discuss about those things, but it was amazing, right? He showed how wise, intelligent, and connected he was. He answered questions to, like, I remember he answered a question to a Protestant pastor about the Genesis book. And he just told them that although spiritists don't get attached to the Old Testament very much, the focus is the New Testament in terms of Christianity and Christian thoughts. And he gave a very interesting answer to the pastor, as far as I remember, because the pastor was asking, Chico, the problem for us Protestants is the reincarnation thing. Reincarnation goes against our interpretation of the Bible. And we are based on the Genesis book. When they said we have the family, for example, the first 4 people on earth, it's Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Who were these people reincarnation of? So Chico give it a second thought for a minute and said, look, we need to study very wisely the Old Testament, because if you see and if you check the chapter 4, verse 16 of Genesis, after Cain killed Abel, he went to a city called Nod where he married his wife and he had a big offspring. So we need to study with these symbols more carefully to understand about this. So, and the audience applaud him very cheerfully, right? So he answered all kinds of questions on and on and on. He said, "Oh, my spirit guide has answered this." He was very humble. He usually said that the answers that came to his mind was coming from the spirit world, and so on and so forth. This was something really important and as Wikipedia says, I think they say here, and let me see their words in Wikipedia, this was the biggest audience ever in Brazilian television in history. It reached, this is 1971, it reached 20 million Brazilians, right? So after that, a phenomenon happened, just curiosity. The Spiritist centers were packed with people, but Spiritist centers were not prepared to receive so many people. We were talking about this when we talked to you about Spiritism in Brazil. I don't know if you remember Miriam Dempen Jeans and Sherry Pearl and all the people talking about the problems of institutions. Institutions were not prepared, with the criteria to receive so many people. And I think this was sort of bad to the Spiritist movement in Brazil, because people were not prepared. And of course, many people were disappointed when, with what they found in the Spiritist centers. Lots of mediumship, for example, really happened, but not a lot of preparation for that. But anyway, this was a milestone in Brazil. For me, for Livia, for me, for example, this was so important because my father passed away. This was 1971. My father passed away in 1975. After that, my mother came to the conclusion that she could be the medium she had always wanted to be. And because my mother usually blocked her mediumships, and no, I don't want to know about these things. This was at the beginning of the marriage, right? At the end of his life, my father was already giving rise to some feelings that, oh, come on, if you see something, just let me know. Because he had already experienced the evidence of my mother's mediumship. So I said, oh, okay, but I don't believe those things, but if you see something, please let me know urgently. Something like that. It was very funny. But anyway, I remember I started reading books because I had lived and witnessed many kinds of mediumship in Brazil. Brazil, as I usually tell you, it was a boiler of mediumship. I myself saw, I have already told you this, a van of paraplegic people being healed and walking out a medium. The medium was called Museu Ambrosio. Mm-hmm. Right. When I was a child, I went there with I saw one of the paraplegic people. I knew myself. So this was Brazil, full of mediumship everywhere and things like that. And but when Chico Xavier's book came to and Allan Kardec book came to my hand, it was a kind of rational refreshment to all those kind of things. Because, when you live this and you come to the adolescence or pre-adolescence, you come to your senses and, my goodness, am I getting crazy? What is it all about? What am I living? Because when I go to school, things are not exactly like this. People don't teach these things. When I go back at home, these things, right, really natural. I think the same problem was, I was interviewing my channel. There was an interview this week with Kai Muga, right? I think he had the same problem when he was a child. Being a medium himself, right? He had the same problem. So I asked my mother after I started reading the books, I got so enthusiastic, and they were explaining so many things so well that I asked my mother to take me to Uberaba. Uberaba was the city where Chico was living at that time. This was 1977. And my mother, of course, as a medium, she was glad that I had that intention, um, uh, that will of being there. And she took me to Uberaba. We went without knowing anything about how to meet him, because he is at that time already a celebrity in Brazil. I remember the week I went there, he was on the cover of the most famous, one of the most famous magazines, a kind of Life in Brazil. The magazine was called Manchete, which is a translation would be headline. And he was on the cover. The cover said, and the headline said, Chico is very sick, right? Well, it was kind of sensationalism, things like that. And I'll show you, I have here a PowerPoint. I'm going to share again. Let's see, how can I get this here? Yeah, that's for us to have an idea. Chico Xavier in our lives. I show you this Pinga Fogo TV program. Well, this is in 1971. This is him. I think the first or second program. I think this is already the second program in December. Very lively, very humble, but at the same time, very sharp in the answers for the whole nation. This was a very, very, very interesting moment for the whole nation, because he, although he's very humble, very simple, he didn't fail to answer the questions in a very acute way, in a very sharp and meaningful way. And this is incredible. This, it's all in all 6 hours of program, answering questions from sexuality to baby boom era to space travels, and that from that point that he made that kind of deadline date. He said, if we don't get involved in a war in the next 50 years, things will be very good for humanity in a big war if we don't get involved, and so on and so forth. This is him again, the second program, December. Well, I'm gonna jump a little bit here. So, look, this is the place where I went to. I got it on Google. I don't think there will be the problems of the copyright. This is Google Street View, and hopefully I thank God I found this picture. This was the house my mother and I, we got a chariot, a touristic chariot, those chariots that tourists take to go around the city. And we got to this place here, which is now today is a memorial for Chico Xavier. This is where you see this door. This was a much simpler place, a much simpler house at the time. And my mother and I, we got off the chariot here and we knocked at the door. I knocked on the door, and but there was nobody answering. But there was a car next to the place, and a woman came out of the car and said, "Look, who are you looking for?" "Oh, we don't know, but the chariot guy said this is the place where Chico Xavier lives." "Yes, he lives here." I soon recognized the woman. She was famous because she usually helped him with psychography things. And she said, "Look, Chico Xavier is not in Uberaba, is not in town. He's in São Paulo. Take a look at this magazine here. He is sick. He's doing acupuncture treatment in São Paulo." So I said to her, "Well, come on. We've come from Belo Horizonte. It's very far, about 400 kilometers or more. I don't know." And she said, "Oh, come on. Some people, they come from Switzerland, other countries in Europe, and they don't find Chico Xavier here." So that answer was really a bucket of iced water on us. And so, yeah, what can you do? We cannot be so egotistic that way too. And we decided to turn around. But my mother, as a medium, said, "Sergio, I think it's strange because the spirits say we will meet him. Maybe it's another time, but I feel it's here. Maybe this woman is not saying the truth." So we we went down the street. Went down we got onto the chariot again and went downtown. Yes, the city center of Uberaba, which is today is 300,000 inhabitants. But at that time, 1977, maybe less than half of this was a small town. And we went downtown. There was a beautiful square, as usual in the Brazilian country towns. And I was going down that square with my mother, right? And we went to this place here. I got to the place where I met him, even in Street View. That place where you see, which today is a textile store, was, I think, a pharmacy where I met Chico. I saw him the other side. She was standing, right here, here, I think. She was standing here looking at me. I said, hey, Mom, that's Chico Xavier. I can tell. Right? And then I crossed, very happy, the street, and the woman next to him was the woman who had approached us. She was very kind of embarrassed, blushing. So, oh, come on. She said, it was meant to be. I'm sorry, I had to lie to you because Chico needs to rest. And that's now a history because Chico Xavier talked to me very important things, because this kind of person, when they talk to you, they say to you things that maybe only 10, 20, 30 years on, you're going to understand exactly what the person was saying. Some things I don't think I can talk to you about, but my mother was very worried about, because I was writing some things mediumistically, and Chico Xavier reassured her, said, no problem. My mother had the intention of me passing it on to people, and Chico turned to me and said, look, don't worry about making people believe or be what you are. You have to follow your pathway and let people free. It's very good it was very good to me, that I shouldn't become a dogmatic person, because adolescents have this tendency, oh, come on, I know about these things, people all over the world have to know. Of course, it's a good intention, but you can mistake your position. You need to know and to give people what they need, right? Not always what they want, but yes, it was a very good advice he gave to me by then. And back to the sharing the pictures for you. I'm going to show you something here very interesting, I guess. Where is it? This is a picture Livia took when she was there. Why I'm saying this? Because Chico Xavier was a phenomenon. And in the Spirit centers, people study a lot. We study lots of books. We study basically Kardashian criterion, which is very important for you to approach, in our opinion, for you to approach mediumistic things without getting into deception and things like that. But at the same time, people can become very theoretical, right? Dealing with lots of theories. So I used to deal with youth groups, and I still deal with youth groups that study these things, and they sometimes could come to the assumption that everything was a beautiful theory, everything was very lovely, right? But when I took them there to see Chico Xavier, even old, you see, Chico Xavier is here about 90 years old. Yeah, 1999. He was born in 1910. Mm-hmm. So almost 90 years old. When they saw the phenomena, they came completely different. And if you can witness this one, I can confirm what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. And when I went there, I had already studied many books from him, and I loved all of them. But I couldn't take a lot about his life. And before I went there, I studied a little bit about his life. So this was very important to me, because I couldn't feel him a little bit more. And
I was able to feel.
I was able, and I went there a little bit a little bit approaching to him, and I had these feelings about his life, his very difficult life, being a medium and dealing with people and being a great phenomenon. And it was not easy for him since he was a child. And when I went there, I could see him and feel this profound feeling of love. I couldn't talk to him because he was at that time really old, around 90 years old. But I could touch and I could kiss his hand and feel him a little bit. Mm-hmm. And this really changed my life. And I couldn't be the same after that. Since I read about his life, I show you the book.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. There's a book that a reporter, a Brazilian reporter, had issued. It's called Chico Xavier, The Lives of Chico Xavier, or Chico Xavier's Lives, right?
Yeah.
This is a reporter. The guy was not a spiritist, so he was not connected to any dogmatic thought or something. This was very important to many of us, right? Because he could see Chico Xavier from a skeptic point of view, which is beautiful, because he was convinced by what Chico Xavier was.
And
another book here about our friend. You issued a video with our friend Geraldo Lemos Neto in the After Friday report. And as I told you, if you want us to invite him to talk to you here, he published this book. He issued this book, right? It's called Chico Xavier, A Mandate of Love, right? Yeah. These books were very interesting. And I took Livia, people were there in Uberaba. And in that occasion, the occasion of this picture here that I was showing to you, there was a very interesting case. One of the youngsters, he was a medicine student, and he came to me and said, Sergio, you know, there was an incident that happened to me in Uberaba at Chico Xavier's meeting. I said, yes, I've heard of that, but I couldn't understand what happened. He said, look, while he was psychographing those letters of the young people who had passed away to their parents or something like this, I was trying to connect to him spiritually. You know, those youngsters things, right? He wanted to connect to Chico Xavier, and he was saying that he could see a ball of fire, right, in his hand, and he put in his mind that he had to touch Chico Xavier's heart, chest. So there was a line after Chico Xavier psychographed or channeled all those messages. He read the messages, and then there was a line of people to greet him, just like Livia did, to kiss his hand and embrace him. And the first thing this guy did was reach out for his chest. He passed out immediately. He had to be taken out, right? I don't know if they took him to the hospital or something, but he wouldn't wake up very soon. so these things happen all the time, this kind of phenomena. And so come on, why would you like to do this? I think it was a little bit of pride, you know. Oh, he was feeling so enlightened by the situation. Look, pay attention before you do this to a medium like that, you know.
Yes, I knew a girl that was a teenager at that time, and her mother took her to know Chico Xavier, and she went there. She was skeptical, and she didn't want to go in there. She stayed outside the house and said to her mother, I won't go there, I don't believe those things. And she said myself that after that, she stayed out of the house. She didn't know him, but after going there, she became a believer. And she said, now I can't.
Yeah, because her daughter came out of the place crying, wasn't it?
Yes, no, her mother came crying. And he said something for her, I don't know what, but she became a believer. Yeah. Just with one phrase from him. And she felt, I think she felt him. She felt the place, she felt what's going on around there. And then she became really a believer, and she was in the Spirit Center dedicated to that.
That's the point I'm telling you. When people saw him, the things that happen around him all the time, as I did, for example, after that, the first time I went with my mother, I came back again there, but that time to see a meeting, a circle. It was very impressive because he was not dedicating anymore to those books, that novels and those books of revelations of technical issues about the afterlife. He was just in the work of consoling people, comforting people through letters. But these letters were amazing, you know, because the data that came through the letters. I think, I don't know if I told you recording, but I remember once, because I was paying a lot of attention to every detail, and there was a woman that she hadn't received any message. She had been going there long, and she hadn't received any message from her son. But when her son came and her husband, a skeptic posture, uh, was listening to the message with so many nicknames, so many details of people. Some people were written in these letters. People, they didn't even remember those people. Like, for example, there was a message that cited a priest, and probably, no, I don't remember this. Later on in the book, the family went to search. They remember that this priest was a friend of our neighbors in a place where they used to live, and the priest was there in the message, right? And the name of the priest. So, and okay, speaking about this, the evidence of mediumship is just, it goes without saying that it's an exaggeration. You don't need to do this. I remember when in Pinga Fogo, Chico Xavier answered the question of that pastor. That pastor was the leader of 1.5 million people of Protestants in Brazil. When he asked about Chico, whose reincarnation is our Adam and Eve and his family. When he answered that question, right, many people were really amazed at his capacity of, intuiting, because he said, no, Emmanuel is saying here to me, I haven't been in touch with that kind of, no, he's saying this, the message is coming from the spiritual side. Okay, so that's it. I think Chico Xavier ended up being something that's so, I know people who are older people who lived with him, but who had never really delved into his books. And now they are with us, for example, and they now say, I don't believe this is the person I had been living with, because he was so humble. And the knowledge today, as you can see today, right, many things that doctors, Brazilian doctors, Brazilian scientists, even Brazilian spirits said, Chico made a mistake writing this because this is not scientifically correct. Now science says it is correct. As there's a case that some doctors came to Chico Xavier saying, Chico, come on, there's a book, it's a very scientific book. It was psychographed through 2 mediums. One was a doctor called Dr. Valdo Vieira, and the other was Chico Xavier. They psychographed in separate cities, and then they put the book together. They were amazing mediums. And this book, just for you have an idea, this book has a little dictionary for you to understand the medical terms of the time. So some doctors came to Chico and said, look, Chico, come on. There's a mistake here. You cannot publish this thing because Spiritism has to base on science too. So, well, okay, but it's not my fault. Andrea Luiz, the doctor here from the Spirit Society, said that he's right and you are wrong. And in the future, this was confirmed. So this is something that made him such a personality, but not only because of the phenomenon, because he transcended this thing of being a medium. Mm-hmm. He was a very nice person. The feeling when I got, because, when I got in that pharmacy, when I met him for the first time, I wasn't even mystifying him because, I didn't really know who he was. But the sensation of him being a mother, a father, a person, a very loving person that was really amazing. It conquers you. Huh? And
it doesn't change our life because he's a saint, but because of these deep feelings in his works and all he does to people, he used to do. But we feel it all the time, and it changes because we feel things can change. We can do something, we can love more, we can do something else for people, not just being a medium, but being a person. And this is very, very different because we don't feel everywhere around in everyone.
I saw a video. Excuse me.
You can say.
I saw a video about Livia Dias,
Yeah.
right? And I saw some very religious people attacking the mediums at Livia Dias. And I remember Chico Xavier, right? Why? Because he made a whole Catholic nation, because Brazilian people were very Catholic back in the 70s, right? To understand that this knowledge that comes from the afterlife will never go against what Jesus Christ usually preached. The cause and effect law, reincarnation, is everything there. It doesn't need, you don't need to be afraid of these realities, right? And we don't need to be afraid of being a denial of Jesus, what Jesus, because the nation, that the audience, if you see it, it's on YouTube. You write there, Pinga Fogo in Portuguese, right? Pinga, right? Fogo, fire, Fogo. You will see the program, the audience is a big audience, of course, of Catholic people, because Spiritists were a few at that time, right? So he said, look, there's no fear, right? Science, there's no fear to face these realities, because you see now I am a phenomenon, but I'm not attacking you. And I see that science is so important, because without science, we can, go far-fetched ways, right? In terms of speculation, that's not the point. So it's so beautiful that this marriage of science, right? Religion, religiousness, and philosophy, right? Or rightly or righteously oriented. That was really amazing. It guided our life. Now, Livia, I asked Livia to be here today. I have some 5 minutes or more. And Livia is going to talk to you a little bit about this mission that Chico Xavier had to prove to people around him that reincarnation was something. That reincarnation was a big deal. It was the thing to understand, and for us to understand ourselves, to understand our problems from the past and our spirits. So Livia is someone that got very interested in, because we had a lot of information from people. And he gave this information to people, didn't he? Mm-hmm. It was, look, he held someone's head. Livia, come on, now I understand why you suffered this when you're born. So it happened this, and that to you. Oh dear, don't blame life, because you did wrong when it was something like that. And the person, wow. And if you go into yourself, you find that reality, So this is something. Livia is going to show you something about that.
Yeah, he made some materializations. Then he materialized the spirits, materialized some
on screens.
Some screen with the past life of so many people that was around him, and teach them about their past lives, the consequences of their past lives. Then Luis, you talk about this book.
This book is something interesting. He is called Chico Xavier Under the Shade of an Avocado Tree. It's our friend from Uberaba called Carlos Marcelli, who is also a medium in Uberaba. And Chico used to sit under the shade of this avocado tree and speak about the gospel, interpret the New Testament according to his knowledge from higher spirits, right? And then, of course, this was, of course, reincarnation was something that really usually tackled by him. So, for example, there was once that he quoted a passage from the gospel. The passage, I don't know if this passage is here. That's the passage. Read the passage.
Take my yoke on you and become like me, for I am gentle and without pride, and you will have rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthew 11:29.
Yeah. So he started interpreting this thing, right? What did he say, Livia?
Yeah, now I have a summary here
Yeah.
because my English is not so good.
Uh-huh.
So, well, we see that Jesus is tackling something important, which is our prideful manners that has its origin according to high spirits in the exceeding inflations of our instinct and preservation, which is egotism and pridefulness.
Yes. So he said, look, we have an instinct of preservation, but when this instinct gets sick, this is pridefulness, right? This is egotism, selfishness. And he said, there is the heavy yoke, the bad yoke, but there is the good yoke, the easy yoke. Mm-hmm. And then he said, Emmanuel is here saying this. What does he say?
Emmanuel is his spirit guide, mm-hmm. and he used to talk about his words. And then he said, Chico goes, within the perfecting law, we realize that we are all subject to the law of the yoke. But unfortunately, not always. We choose the easy yoke that the divine law offers, because that yoke is easy and light, since it only requires a duty, love, and charity. It's a very serious passage to which we should pay closer attention within us so we can understand our situation.
So yes, then he's going to speak the problems of the bad yoke. Yeah. Right? He's going to tell you that if you choose the bad yoke, there will be consequences, as for example, because this is we came from the book. Yes, he said whenever we are offended, we ourselves want to apply the law ourselves. Then we search for a punishment to the one who offended us, and if we don't do that, we'll be called naive or cowardly. But the easy yoke of love entails forgiveness. So there is the easy yoke, but there's also the heavy yoke. The heavy yoke is within the cause and effect law. When we do not agree to help, with love, by understanding, justifying people's mistakes, we cannot exert God's function, but we try to do. So we let the easy yoke take control over us, and it doesn't mean indifference. It means energetic mildness. It's a mild energy. But he goes on again and says, but when we want the difficult or heavy yoke, we usually atone for our unfortunate attitudes with much more serious problems. We suffer mutilations, congenital diseases, incompatibilities, illnesses that are of difficult healing. Mm. And today, spiritualists, science is coming to a conclusion that forgiveness has lots to do with healing.
Because the law of God is inside us. And when we are in the heavy yoke, we don't have mercy. So we don't have mercy with us. It's not God punishing us, like Chico said. It's just us punishing ourselves. Then we don't have mercy with ourselves. So we suffer more. Then when we forgive more, we have more forgiveness with us.
But the point is, this is not a theory. When we live together along with Chico Xavier, he went to the places where people are suffering, and he unveiled their past. And researchers, like until today we have researchers, people like, come on, Chico came to that place. There was a guy in bed, and he said, this guy, the problem his problem was in the First World War, because he did this, and that. And that's why his problem is here in his stomach because of this and this, blah, 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 blah. And the guys went to research about that. And come on, my goodness, how can this man get so much information from life, from the outside, from the other light of life? So it was this to prove that what Jesus Christ, when he said, when you were hurt by the sword, you'll be hurt by the sword. If you're not merciful, because if you are merciful, charitable, and you hurt by the sword in the past, you can be a surgeon. You can be someone that by doing good, recover your debts under the law in a charitable and loving way. And then that reminds us of the Apostle Peter says, Love covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's but it's not only, as I tell you, not on the theory. When you live together with a person like that, he said persistently. If you came next to Chico Xavier with a doubt in your mind, a doctrinary, a spiritist doubt in your mind, he would really grasp that and come with an answer. Oh, look, the point is this, 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 and that.
Yeah, we had a friend from a Spiritist movement that was one of the personalities of the Chico's books, and he was a very interesting personality. And he used to live next to him, next to Chico, and he said so many things about his past lives, and said, you should deal in helping spiritualist sections as much as you could throughout your whole life. And then he dedicated because of his past lives. And he was one of the personalities we talk
the Count
about.
of Alba in Spain,
Yeah.
according to Chico Xavier. Because these famous people who are famous, is easier for you to spot, not because they are famous, no, because it's easier for you to get information in history. And if you get information about the Count of Alba, and he is also a character in Chico's book, the psychological characteristics are the same.
Yeah.
And through Chico books, Chico novels, you see how little we changed throughout hundreds of years. We've just, people who really change are those who came to the conclusion that they had to renew themselves inside. But most of us don't do this, even practicing religions or whatever, being authorities in this or that, which sometimes we usually don't do this. We postpone this work, which is a lot of suffering in the hundreds of years ahead. We suffer because we just don't get this idea of the easy yoke. Right? That's why we chose this words of Shiva. Okay, well, people, we could be talking here the whole day, the whole night, right? Yeah. But just I would only share the last image to you. It's the place where I used to be with Chico Xavier, where his meeting used to be. Was this place here? Yeah, it's a beautiful place, isn't it? It's called the Spiritist Circle of Prayer. In Portuguese, Grupo Espírita da Prece, right? It's it's near his house, that the memorial was, and so. And this is the place where lots of phenomena happened, right? This is the place where our friend passed out and touched his heart. This is the place of many mothers, many parents fainted, passed out, listening to the message, to astonishing, reaching data message from their relatives. And Chico, the only thing they say Chico used to do was to have the name of the person, the deceased person, and to hold the hand of the person who's searching for information, right? Basically something like this, and all the other data came through. And the rest is history, and you will see when I bring Geraldo Lemos Neto to talk to you here, because he has, look, Geraldo Lemos Neto is an example. And Lemos Neto is a guy, a very rich guy here from Brazil, well off, and so on. And he used to write letters to Chico Xavier, but he wrote these letters in an anonymous way. He didn't write the sender. And one day he met Chico Xavier in São Paulo, and he spotted him and said, well, why didn't you ever write your address for me to answer your letters? Oh, of course. That was a moment he said, oh, come on, how did this guy discover I had been writing to him? And without writing my name and my address, nobody knew, his family didn't know. And after that, so Chico went on conquering everyone, every skeptic person around him to be what they are. Today, Geraldo has a published house, and he started publishing all the material that was left after Chico passed away. And that's it, people, what I have to say to you today. Otherwise, I'm going to spend a lot of time. Back to you.